In 1981, a group of guys who were so different from each other you would never find them in the same room got together to become the guinea pig band for a recording school at a studio called Recording Associates. And out of the deal, the band would get free demos and get to record in a nice studio. It was like the biggest one at the time here in Portland, Oregon. And so I've been playing with Jeff, Mark, and Mike Landauer. He was in Malice later on, and Pete Holmes over the summer. Ironically, I took Danny Kerr's place in the band, and those guys. I had a bunch of. I released a record called The Ravers earlier that year, and I had the drummer shot a guy on the bus, and so he was in jail. The bass player decided he was going to move to Seattle, and so I had no band, but I had a bunch of gigs that I had to do. And so Mike Landauer called me up, and I went over and played with those guys, and we were the Ravers for that summer. Well, come the end of the summer, Jeff says, "Hey, I'd like to do some recording." "Yeah, I love to record." With us, or? "Well, no, Mike's not going to do it. It'll be you, me, Pete, and Danny Kerr, except Danny Kerr's going to play bass." It's fine. I'll bring a guitar. And I have lots of songs. And he knew that, and so I brought my 76 Ibanez Iceman over there. I had an original Marshall 50-watt bass head and cabinet, and so we knocked out Fugitive of the Law the very first time. And the session was like in a week, and so we only got one song prepared for that time. We did that, and then we went back with we had like 3 weeks to get more songs, and we got 3 more tunes. Danny wrote 2 of them, and I wrote the lyrics to another one that Jeff had. That's how it usually seemed to work out, where Jeff would have a riff, and my puzzle was to put together other parts to flesh out the song, to arrange it, to produce the song basically, and then write the lyrics. Danny wrote the lyrics to his songs, and we went in and did those. Let's see. "We got the power to lead the way. We're in control. We got the power" was one song, and "Running Away" was another one, which was kind of a Van Halen-y type song that Jeff brought, and "Tonight Will Rock." Well, by that time, right around then, I had seen Mike Varney, the president of Shrapnel Records. And Shrapnel Records, for those who don't know, is the label that discovered Yngwie Malmsteen, Paul Gilbert, Marty Friedman. He revolutionized the whole guitar sound, and took it to the next step after Eddie Van Halen. Well, he didn't, but all the people he did. But actually, Mike is a pretty darn good guitar player, and he could keep up with most everybody that he found. And so we decided to send him a tape because, well, here's what the deal was. J.J. Jackson, a VJ on MTV, had said, "Go get a pen because you're going to need to write down an address. If your band has a great unsung guitar hero, this is something you can't miss." And we did. And we weren't really a band. We were just, getting some free demos because the other guys, Jeff had a cover band, and Danny was playing in another band and worked at Sears, and Pete was pretty much ready to join Black and Blue at this time. So I took that. He said he's putting a compilation record out, and I already had a record out, so I knew what was going on, and we put together a cassette with one of Jeff's weird porno pictures. Some people in PVC with electronic gadgets doing something to each other. No nudity. It was just all like they're in PVC bodysuits, head to toe. And we sent that with no picture of the band, and really not a lot of description. Just, basically all on the music. And he liked it. He said, Mike said in the letter that he wrote back, really quick, nice quick response. He said, "You guys are great. The guitar work is above," he liked the guitar, and said the vocals are too Negro-esque. Well, I do have African American DNA in my family, so maybe that's it. But really, I was just sounding like Johnny Winter or Gene Simmons. And so he said, can you are you going to do more recordings? We said, yeah, we're going in 3 weeks, so we'll send you those songs. In the meantime, Pete Holmes had decided to join Black and Blue, who later got a deal on Geffen, toured the world. They're produced by Gene Simmons. And Dieter Dierks, too, the first one, I think. So he left, and we were out of a drummer. But Danny Kurth, who had been in a band in high school, and all these different, they were called Jet originally, from Cleveland High School. They were awesome. They had the show, they had a manager, they played and worked every weekend. They had Fire, they had Fog, they did the Total Kiss thing, and he had been in a band with Jamie. Jamie was a drummer in that band. He was a drummer, in fact, up till the time Pete Holmes joined Black and Blue, because their singer, Ray Molson, who is actually known as Julian Raymond, and he's a pretty well-known producer, and I think he's the president of Hollywood Records down in Hollywood. And so Danny says, I'll call Jamie. And he calls Jamie, and Jamie says, yeah, I got nothing to do. I got a spider coming down here to see what's going on. They just drop in on me. You're not too big. Go away. Starstruck spider. So Jamie comes over, and man, that guy is just a swing and rock drummer from hell. He'd been playing since he was like 9. You know, I watched this guy. In fact, I tried to join one of their bands. Let me give you a little background on the Black and Blue legacy. They started out as Jet with 4 guys: Barry, Ray, Danny, and Jamie. And by the time they were like 16, they had a thing called Hell. They were kind of like the antithesis of Angel. They dressed in red chiffon and satin, and they had a show and big sun amp stacks, and they went down and did a gig at the Troubadour as a showcase. But then they came back, and Danny decided he wasn't going to play anymore with those guys. I tried out for the band, but I was just not cute enough. You know, I excel in this. They all had hair. So they all changed their names. It was great. Hell was Julian Raymond, was Ray. Jamie St. James, who was normally Jim Pond. Barry Pendergrass became Virgil Ripper, and Danny became Damian Daniels. It was really awesome for, teenagers, man. Nobody did this, especially in my high school. I went to high school where the Grateful Dead was king and jazz was king, and I love jazz and Grateful Dead. And I don't know, not so much. Great PA system. Yeah, there you go, Dave. So you guys, yeah, okay. I'm getting to the point. So there's the background on Jet, became Hell, became The Force, and they dressed like cops. And then they became Loved by Millions, and this lead singer, Ray, looked like, rich guy with a, tennis outfit on. And then they became Movie Star. And then finally they became Black and Blue. But they played clubs, these guys worked. There was a lot of clubs here that you could go make, big money playing 5 sets, 6 sets a night, 5 days a week. And that's what they did. I never did that because well, for one thing, my record skipped, so I never knew the right version of the song. All my songs were like, a half a verse short because the thing would skip because I was going over it trying to learn the lead parts. So anyway, we get Jamie, and I've got Born to Rock and Life is a Game, and Jeff had I Need a Love and Two Wrongs. And Danny, who Mike Varney liked his song the best, he had the Tonight Show. So we went in, we practiced for 5, it was actually 5 weeks, 6 weeks. It was a long time. We took our time, and what is this? Everything's flying in on me. It's like a tiny seagull. So we record these 5 tunes. After we fleshed them out, we tried them every which way, different verses, different bridges. We really worked on the arrangements, which didn't happen after we got Deen. It was more like, hey man, we gotta go play a gig. Yeah, let's see. Oh, that sounds great. Okay. But before that, we took our time and did it. Went in the studio and laid it down. And each time we went in, the engineer Bob Stoutenberg got us sounding better and better. We sent that tape down to Mike Varney, and he loved the Tonight Show and wanted to put that song on U.S. Metal Volume 2. It's ironic that U.S. Metal is my website, but I wanted Northwest Metal. That wasn't available. They suggested this, and I thought, no brainer, Maynard. So he says, I'm gonna put this on compilation. Puts it on the compilation. We don't think twice about it because Jamie is moving to Hollywood with Black and Blue, and I kept saying, come on, man, let's get a drummer, let's audition, put an ad out, and see if we can get a drummer and keep going with this thing. Jeff was playing, like Journey and Foreigner and Loverboy songs, and he was making good money, and he was a hard one to convince, actually. So we must have tried out. We had drummers. We had drummers coming in and out like a stream, like JFK with women. It was we must have tried out 20 different guys, and in the meantime, I took my ancient Slingerland half kit, beat the crap set that I had, and I said, I'll play drums and we can keep writing songs. And that's what we did. And we finally found Bryce Van Patten. He was probably the most likely candidate. In fact, I think he was going to be the guy. And one summer night, Kip Doran, my good friend, he also plays lead guitar on Fugitive of the Law on one of the lead parts in there. He said, you guys, Jay Reynolds was living at my house at the time. And Jay said, hey, Kip called. He said, we got to go check out this drummer. He's playing down at Eli's, this club downtown. And the guy's amazing, and he's like a kid. So we went down there that night and met Deen. We walked in. There's like 7 people in this club. The stage is pretty big, but it wasn't big enough to hold Deen's 12-foot by 12-foot, 2.5, 3 foot high, made of plywood and 2x4 drum riser, and the other bandmates. So the other guys, Rick Bartell and this guy named Jacques Mo on guitar, who was like phenomenal guitar player. They stayed on the dance floor and played from down there. Deen had timpani, he had glockenspiel, mockenspiel. He had 2 timpani, 3 gongs, this huge set. He sang everything, and I was just floored because I normally don't like the song, what's that, Shoot Shoot by UFO. But that time when I saw him do it, it was spectacular because there was double bass going through the whole thing, and he was just blowing my mind like a Billy Cobham doing rock. And for those who don't know, Billy Cobham is, he was Vishnu's drummer, and if you don't know who Billy Cobham is, go Google that name. And it just blew my mind. So we talked to him, and Dean's a great guy, man. He's always the host. Hey man, how's it going? All right, man, cool, nice to meet you. Hey, you got flies in your jacket? I had these gold flies. You see, my aunt she had a boutique in San Francisco in the 60s, and she got famous making these wavy belts, which I think became popular, but they had weird stuff on them. So I took these flies, these metal flies, and put them on my jacket instead of studs, because you couldn't find studs to make your own stuff until one day when I finally found a place that sold them. The sporting goods store. So still at this time, we're not really thinking about being a band, but Jay was definitely building Malice as a, like a business, and he couldn't get Mick Zane, who was Mike Landauer still then, because this is a funny story. The Ravers record, I Was a Teenage Rock and Roller, came out earlier that year, 1981, in February. And there was a party at the house where the studio was. It was a nice house in Southwest Portland. And there was the Tower of Power horn section, Kenny G, Tom Grant, Brian Allen, no, what's his name? Harrison, the older guy, the piano jazz guy, Michael Allen Harrison. And because the label, we were the only rock band on the label. I tried to get Chris Newman and the Untouchables on there, but they didn't want to give up their music. And boy, that was too bad because Andy McKay, the guy that produced it, really liked them. He wanted to take them to New York. He thought they could really fly, but that didn't happen. So we're at the studio with all these, guys, and I'm in my Keith Moon phase and punk rocker because the Ravers was a new wave punk rock band. We played in the punk club, and there was only two places to play original music at that time, and that was actually three if you count the Met, which was a gay bar, and we were called back. We were called the Penetrators before we changed. Before the producer made us change our name from the Penetrators to the Ravers, and it was spelled P-E-N-I. It was kind of funny that we played at the gay bar, and we realized that our drummer had a penchant for soft young boys at the time. So there was that, and there was Urban Noise, which was owned by Fred and Ronnie Noyes. He worked at Music Millennium forever, and The Long Goodbye, that was owned by Tony DiMacaulay. So I never played in the top 40 clubs because Andy Gilbert, I just didn't do that. That's all. I started writing music at an early age, and I only wanted to do my songs. If I did another song, it was like, we're doing a cover of something else. So, wow. I get lost in this, going back in time, man. The time machine. So, we're at this party. The record release party for the Ravers, I Was a Teenage Rock and Roller, produced by Andy McKay, his first job was the publicist for JFK. Then from then on, he went to CBS and was the head of publicity at CBS, and then left with Clive Davis to start Arista Records, and he was the head of publicity there, and then stayed there for a long time. He was on his way to being an executive in the publicity department at MCA, as he was doing this independent label. And so I didn't want to really embarrass anybody, so I didn't do anything. I didn't have to. James Neal came. Jay was in the band. Jay Reynolds from Malice was in the Ravers, and he brought Mike Landauer and Paul Kearney, this photographer, and James Neal, and we had a bunch of guys there. So James, who's kind of a crazy man, he's got a can of beer, KB Lager. They're big 24-ounce cans that look like an oil can, and one of those makes him crazy. Two of them, he's legally insane. He's a 5150, and he's there leaning up against the thing, joking and laughing, and drowns this beer, and gets up and sunny there, and he goes outside in the backyard. There's a door right there. We don't see him for 20 minutes. When he does return, he's stark naked, and he's covered in shit. Covered in feces. How's that? That gives it a little more class. And I said, what happened? Did you fall? Trying to be punk rock cool. I don't want to be disturbed by this, because actually it's pretty funny, because he walks in, swaggers over, cracks another beer, leans up against the counter, and it just reeks. And he's chugging on this beer. And I said, well, that's a pretty good piece of artwork you got going there. How'd that happen? I was taking a shit and I fell over. Then I decided I'll just wipe it on me. And so he painted his whole body, totally naked, stinking to high heaven. And I think somebody said something to him, and he took off running out the door down to the freeway. So because of that incident, Mike Landauer didn't want to play with James Neal in Malice. And so here's where we're going back to Eli's with Deen and The Enemy. That's the band's name. Jay says, hey, we're going to record a demo in a couple of weeks, maybe next weekend. Are you available? Do you want to do this? And Matt will play bass, Kip will play guitar, and James will sing, and we'll have some fun. So we did. We went and recorded the very first Malice demos that got them a spot on the Brian Slagle's Metal Massacre 2 album that had Metallica and Sarah Thungal and Steeler, and it was a pretty big record. So, and he also used that so he could lure Mark Bain and Mike Landauer into the band because, listen to James, we'll be huge, man. We'll get a big label deal. We'll move to Hollywood, and that's exactly what they did. And they got signed to Atlantic, and the rest is history. While Wild Dogs is still, without a drummer, trying out different guys, and really no intention of being a band at all because everybody was busy. But at the same time, U.S. Metal 2 came out, and people liked it. We started getting a lot of fan mail letters, like on graph paper from Europe and things like that. And so Dean out of the blue called me and says, "Hey, you guys need a drummer still?" And I said, "Yeah, well, can I come over and jam with you?" And I said, "Sure." And so Jamie had left his kit here at Danny's basement where we practiced in his parents' house. And it was a pristine Ludwig, long toms, heads had never been dented even. He used small jazz sticks, and he had a ghost pedal, which at the time was like the heavy-duty pedal. His cymbals were all nice, no cracks, no dings, nothing. Dean comes in, and, "Hey, man, how you doing?" And Dean was a big guy. He was a lot bigger than he is now. And Jeff's really skeptical about anybody I brought into the fold because he didn't bring them in. He's weird that way. So Danny was like, well, maybe, we think we got a guy. Well, try Dean. So Dean comes over, and, I'd given him the tape, but I told him he's never heard this stuff before. And so we launched into it, and he just blasts them, right? Just kicks ass on all the songs and literally breaks the drum set by the time we get to like the 6th song. The bass drum foot pedal, the footboard, he broke in half and punched through the head on the kick drum with a felt, the felt mallet, nothing hard, and broke 2 of the cymbals, totally wasted all of the top heads, broke the snare head, cracked the hi-hat, and I said, "Wow, that's awesome," and then he left. I said, "Well, what do you think?" And Jeff's like, "Well, he's a kid, he's fat, and we won't be able to control him, and he overplays, and he's hyper," and it's like, "Hey, that's my kind of guy." And so I pushed the issue. I pushed it really hard, let me put it that way, and said, "Look, we're getting some notice." And then I talked to Mike Varney. So they eventually said, "Okay, well, we'll just do it." I said, "You won't regret it." Well, so I talked to Mike and I said, "Well, hey, you know what you should do instead of these compilations? What you should do is take the band that has the best response off of these compilations and do a full record with them." And he said, that's a good idea. "How about you guys? You guys already have over half a record. Why don't you record 3 or 4 songs with your new drummer, and you can pay for it out of the royalties I'm going to give you for the U.S. Metal 2 comp. You got about $700 coming off the one song." No, actually, we had 2 songs. No? What did we do? No, we just had the one song in there, I think. And so we go back into Recording Associates, and they cut us a swinging deal, and we re-record Born to Rock, which also had been, we won a contest on KGON, the radio station. All this happened like bang, bam, bowie, everything lined up, and they just happened all at the right time. It's, being in the right place, the right time, does matter. And just boom, it was time. It was just it. There was a contest to be on a compilation for KGON, the big FM station here in Portland, and you had to win a spot on it by people calling in. So we called everybody we knew and told them, listen, and then call in and vote for us. And so we won with Born to Rock, which it is an FM radio classic hit sounding type of record. I wrote that... I wrote that right after the Ravers record was recorded and before the drummer shot the guy, and it was in a little place behind this place called the Head Shop, and It was it was a head shop on 82nd where all the hookers were, and Brad Simpson, the drummer, and Jesse Sampsell, who's a big time blues guy. We were jamming, and so I had this riff, and so I recorded that, and that's where that came from. So I had most of the songs I had written before that, all of them almost. So that came out, and we were on the radio. So the first thing that we did once we got Deen was we went to the KGON release party with Deen. And I had met this woman, Angie, who was a groupie. I met her coming off Van Halen's tour bus, and I thought, well, she's going to be warmed up tonight. This ought to be easy. So she was there, and she, I was trying to keep up with the big boys, so that meant champagne and crazy antics all the time, which was a little detrimental to things later on, but we'll get to that. And so Dean's going, man, we gotta have a gig, or I can't just stick around. I gotta play. So Mike Varney says, let's do you guys come down to San Francisco. And this is like a year after I met Deen. We didn't play for a year or more than a year. It was like exactly a year after I met Deen that we played a gig, and we've been together. We've been doing this since the fall. That was in August, so we didn't play anything live. Never planned on it. So Mike says, "Come down, play when you'll be playing with a group called Culprit from Seattle, who they're kind of like Iron Maiden and Rush. They're great band, and Mike Varney's band Cinema, and then in between times." This young guitar guy in a powder blue spandex danskin bodysuit, he came out and would do solo guitar, in between the stuff. That guy was Brad Gillis, I found out. I had no idea who that was for years. Jeff Thorpe from Vicious Rumor said, no, Brad Gillis, you played a gig with him. Your very first one. It's like, oh, that was him. Our record hadn't come out yet. And MTV came down to shoot the gig, and shot all of us and interviewed us, and as a follow-up to the piece that J.J. Jackson did with Mike Varney. And then it was on TV, it was on MTV. So it was like everything was just working perfectly, except for the 4 different brains going in 5 different directions, each guy wanting something different. And I'll tell you, if I can give any band's advice, don't share your press clippings with anybody in the band. If you have a manager, tell him to keep all of that stuff out of sight. Don't let him read any of it because it messes you up. So we get some reviews, and then, especially live ones, it's like, well, you guys should do this. Everybody's an expert on your band, right? So this one thing I liked about, say, like Metallica, they didn't listen to anybody. My guys, they just wanted the shortest path to rock and roll stardom, so if it meant getting rid of the guy who did everything, that's me, that's okay. And I'm sure they, because I did everything, and Jeff is kind of a control, not kind of, Jeff is definitely a control freak kind of guy. And I was booking the band, making the deals, doing the publicity, doing all the interviews, and, that probably could set a little distance between people. And so our record came out, and more interviews and stuff, and I would share it with a band, and you get a bad one, and unlike me who reads a bad one and goes, well, the guy just didn't get it, somebody else will. No, we're going to change everything that we've done. We're going to change so we can please that one guy who will never, ever like us. So that's what happened. Well, we're not commercial enough. No, we got our own thing going, and they just didn't realize it. And that's the tragedy of this thing. We had a great thing. It was a crazy live show. I couldn't take my eyes off Deen Castronovo when I was on stage. It'd be like, he just threw 3 sticks up in the air, juggled, and didn't miss a beat. And he's like 17 years old. He plays, his foot pedals would be cocked back Usually drummers will have their beater, up here. So it goes boom, 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 boom. Dean would put his way back here. Here's where your foot goes. And he had these clackers, like these hard plastic balls as beaters. And so when he played his drum set, these things that hit you on the top of your feet, I'm pretty sure it was why he played so fast, because it hurt. And so unless he kept it going, they keep hitting his feet. But it was crazy, man. Put big old metal things on the drums and on the kick drums and click, click, click like Pantera did later on. And now, Vito DeVito from Danmar Percussion, he invented the metal kick impact pad. That's a tongue twister. And yeah, I'm just kind of free forming it here. Is that okay? Okay.